Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Today being a Sunday, I'm seeing very less participants compared to other days. But this being revisionary classes, this has been scheduled for Sunday. So we would expect that most students who are willing to join are just slowly joining in. Never mind. So while the participants join in, do you have any kinds of queries from the previous class? Are you clear with the concepts what you have taught till now? Because we have completed 7 chapters. That's a remarkable progress we have done. That we have completed all the chapters till chapter number 7. We have completed the starting with introduction, then moving towards supply under GST, then going to charge of GSC, and then going to the place of supply, understood all the rules of the place of supply. We have understood the exemptions was a detailed chapter, we have completed that. We have also finished the time of supply and the value of supply, and we had a exhaustive MCQs at the end of each chapters. So this will be very structured and remembered for you by you for your exams. And whichever PPTs you have not been uploaded will be uploaded today so that you could refer them for your reference purposes. Today we will go to the very important topic, which is input tax credit. Okay, we know that since you have all read these chapters, you will recollect that input tax credit is touching almost all the chapters. Whenever we were discussing other chapters, there also we had a discussion on input tax credit. Correct. So input tax credit is very important chapter because there we get to know how and why the credit is claimed. Like when somebody charges GST, why is he charging you GST? Because you have to get the credit. So how will you get the credit? When you pay the payment to him and claim that credit in your returns, right? Without input tax credit, the GST system won't work. The main reason why the GST system came in itself was to give all the possible credits to you. Unlike the previous regime, where there was no credit of goods given to a service provided, also the credit of services not was not given to a goods provider. So there was a conflict. There was no there was a cascading effect, and the credit was not available to a person who would manufacture. He will not get the credit of he will get the all the credit because he has the credit of SENVAT and VAT. But for others, they wouldn't have got the credit. That's the reason the GST system is made in such a way that we can claim all the credit. Yes, Nagesh.
Sir, one request, the chat box is disabled. So, request, can you please guide the admin to disable the chat
Sure.
box so that we can interact with you?
Okay. Ashok sir, can you enable the chat box? नहीं, वो मैंने डिस्कस किया था। इस बैच में तो कोई कर नहीं रहा वैसे। Sure. Okay. Thank you, sir. So you can now ask your queries over the chat. And please be careful. The chat was disabled because there were some students who were not being disciplined in the class, misusing the chat option. That's the least option which we can give you to ask for queries, but people were using without any discipline those chat messages. So kindly refrain from doing anything like that so that you are not blocked, so that our communication is not blocked otherwise then. Okay. So please be careful. Use the utilities given to you in a effective and proper manner. Okay. So we'll now proceed towards the basics of input tax credit and then go to the provisions of input tax credit. See, generally, what is input tax credit? We all know it. But for a layman to understand and for us to store in mind that why and how we will use input tax credit in our practical application, we will use input tax credit to calculate the net GST payable. Now, what is that net GST payable? It is basically whatever is the tax we collect on our sales. We know that on a supply, GST has to be collected. So, whenever we make any supply on that, tax is collected. That tax is called as output GST. Okay. So, once we pay the output GST, then we have to reduce the taxes on the whatever we make purchases, whatever expenses we incur, whatever machinery we buy, which means that there could be three type of input tax credit which can be available. One is tax on your purchase of goods. That is called as input tax. Okay. That is tax on inputs. Just input means tax on purchase of materials. Then tax on input services means tax on expenses, and tax on machinery would mean tax on your capital goods. So input could be coming to you in three types: that tax on inputs, tax on input services, and tax on capital goods. So these are the three kinds of inputs which are available to you. Whatever taxes all put together is called as input GST or input tax credit. So this is our input tax credit. Whenever we refer to input tax credit, it would include tax on inputs, input services, and capital goods. All of this three put together is called as ITC, input tax credit. Okay. From your output, what input you reduce, you get GST payable. Okay. It could be GST payable or it could be GST credit. How could it be GST credit? When your input tax credit is more than your output GST, that would result in a GST credit situation wherein your input for the month is more than your output, then it is a case of a GST credit. Now, this credit, whatever is there, that becomes a part of your balance input tax credit, which means that once you have claimed the credit, you can utilize it for your future periods also. So, your output tax is less than your input tax. That gives a situation of a GST input tax credit. Now, this input tax credit you can utilize for your future months also. And reverse situation where your output GST is more than your input GST, your GST output is more than your input credits, what you have, then what do? You will claim the credit from the previous months, like how this balance ITC is there for this month. Similarly, there can be balance ITC of the previous months. So, first you will utilize current month's credit against your output GST, and then if there is some shortfall, then you will utilize your previous carry forward credit also. Even if then there is some shortage, then you have to pay the GST through cash. Okay, so total what you collect, you have to reduce your ITC. Whatever is the balance, you have to pay through the cash. Now, what all input tax you can have tax paid on purchases, various vendors, whatever we have purchased, all gets accumulated and gets offset for tax on output. Now, there the tax on output was 450 rupees, less what is paid on inputs is 100, 120, 180, which means 300 was my input. So, input tax credit will become 300 and balance GST payable will be rupees 150. Now, where we were talking just in the introduction, that is specifically highlighted in your study material where they've said that in pre-GST we had SENVAT and VAT. What is SENVAT? CENVAT is Central Value Added Tax. CENVAT stands for Central Value Added Tax, and VAT stands for Value Added Tax. So, what do you think is the difference between CENVAT and VAT? Okay, any more answers? I've just received answer from a few people. Correct. So, Kamalpreet, Komalpreet, Bhumika, Divya. Divya is not given correct answer. Om Krishna has given correct answer. Abdan, correct. So everyone knows the difference between CENVAT and VAT, but for few people who didn't give the correct answer for their benefit and few people who did not answer at all, for them, let me tell you that CENVAT means Central Value Added Tax. This goes to the central government, that's right. And VAT stands for Value Added Tax. This goes to the state government, correct. That is very much right. But you have to understand how it goes. Pre-GST, these were there, right? These are the credits which were available pre-GST. CENVAT was the credit which was available for the central value added taxes. What were the central value added taxes? Two central value added taxes were there. Tell me what were those two central value added taxes and what was the VAT under the state laws? Is customs also a central value added tax? Because we know customs is going to the state government. So is customs also part of the CENVAT? Shoaib has said that in CENVAT, central excise duty is included. Okay. What else? Abdan is saying central excise duty and service tax. Okay. Central excise duty and CST. Okay. Komalpreet, are you sure it includes CST also? Is the credit of CST claimable? Service tax and central excise duty. Okay, what about others? Are you not understanding or you don't know? There could be two situations. Okay, let's take this positively that you are confused, so you're not answering. So there could be CENVAT and VAT. Okay. Under CENVAT, you have, as rightly said for few people, credit of excise duty, which is charged by the manufacturer, and service tax, which is charged by the service provider. Okay. So central excise duty, what is being charged, that was a credit which was available to any other person who is doing a manufacturing activity. So Senvat also had two divisions. One is Senvat credit of excise duty and Senvat credit of service tax. A manufacturer, when he sells something, he can claim credit of Senvat duty, Senvat central excise and service tax. But a service provider, okay, a service provider couldn't claim credit of the central excise duty because central excise duty was limited to another manufacturer who can claim it. But service tax, a manufacturer could have claimed. Now, go to the second situation where a service provider could claim credit only of the said service tax which is charged by any other service provider. He would never get the credit of the excise duty which is charged by any manufacturer. So, Senvat had again two parts. Now, Senvat majorly had two things, central excise duty and service tax. VAT means state value added tax. Okay, customs duties. I'll come to customs duties. VAT means the VAT which is charged by the state. So if I am in the state of Karnataka, another dealer who's selling it to me, he is charging me VAT on whatever sales he makes. That is called as VAT credit. Now, when I'm selling this interstate, I will charge CST called as Central Sales Tax. When I was using charge CST, I could claim the credit of that. But when I charge CST, the other state couldn't claim the credit because when will I charge Central Sales Tax? When I'm making a interstate sale. When I'm making an interstate sale from Bangalore to Tamil Nadu, I will charge CST. Now, this CST, what I used to charge, that credit was not available to the buyer. Okay. So within VAT also conflict, within SENVAT also conflict. So there was no fungibility. Now, do you think customs is also part of SENVAT? No, customs is not part of SENVAT because customs duty, we will not get credit. You never used to get the credit pre-VAT, and even under GST regime, we do not get the credit of the customs duty portion. So when you import something even today, in spite of introduction of GST, you will see that customs is outside the ambit of GST. So whenever you pay customs duty when you import, you don't get the credit of it. But when you import, you pay customs duty plus IGST. So that IGST you can get the credit. So there are two components. One is customs duty, one is IGST. IGST credit you will get, but the customs duty portion you will not get the credit. Now, we know that within SENVAT and VAT itself, they were now there was no fungibility between SENVAT and VAT also. If I am a manufacturer, I am manufacturing something, I am selling goods to you. So I will charge excise duty and I also charge VAT. Now, when I will charge VAT to another customer, he is not a manufacturer, he's a dealer. Now, dealer will not be registered under excise duty because he's not doing any manufacturer. So he will do something called as a VAT registration. So when I'm charging him excise duty and VAT, he cannot get the credit of the central excise duty what I'm charging. So the SENVAT, what is otherwise available to another manufacturer, is not available to a trader. तो एक trader को central excise duty का credit नहीं मिलेगा, ठीक है? और वैट जो पे किया वो सेंट्रल एक्साइज ड्यूटी के साथ ऑफसेट नहीं कर सकते. तो सेंट्रल एक्साइज एंड वैट दोनों वैल्यू एडेड टैक्स रेजिम थे, बट वन वाज फॉर सेंटर, वन वाज फॉर शेयर. इन दोनों के बीच में माल हाल तेल नहीं रखता था. So each of this cannot offset the credit with one element. And CST, somebody was saying, madam, CST was levied on interstate transactions, but उसके ऊपर भी credit नहीं मिलता था. So it's a straight away a cost. Whenever you make any interstate supply, you had to charge CST and no credit was available. But now, ये pre-GST हो गया है. Under GST, there is seamless flow of credit. Manufacturer also will charge GST when he provides to a trader. Trader can claim it. Trader gives the same goods to a service provider. Service provider also can claim it. And service provider charging anything to a trader, that also a trader can claim it. So cross exchange, ये जो difference था SENVAT और VAT का वो चला गया. Everybody can claim the credit. Now, everybody can claim the credit except on these following supplies. That is, whenever there is a composition scheme and there is a exempt goods. Why composition scheme it is not there? Because under composition already they are having a concessional GST rate. And that GST rate, what is being charged by a composition dealer cannot collect from his customers. Okay, so that's the reason the buyer cannot claim the credit. And secondly, the government is giving you the credit so that you will generate some revenue from the inputs. That's why we are giving you credit, so that whenever value addition you do a completion of process and sell something, you will pay GST to the government. That was the expectation. But for exempted goods, when you buy something, okay, it will be leviable to GST. But when you sell that product, it is classified as an exempt product. So on that exempt product, GST is not payable. So once GST is not payable, then the corresponding input tax credit is not available. करेक्ट. इनपुट के ऊपर क्रेडिट है, आउटपुट के ऊपर भी क्रेडिट टैक्सेबल है, तो फिर दिस क्रेडिट इज जस्टिफाइबल, क्योंकि इस क्रेडिट को यूटिलाइज करके आप वैट एक्स्ट्रा जो भी वैल्यू एडिशन उसके ऊपर गवर्नमेंट को टैक्सेस भर रहे हो. लेकिन जब आपको इनपुट पे मैं क्रेडिट दे रहा हूं लेकिन आउटपुट पे आप टैक्स नहीं भर रहे हो, देन आपको क्रेडिट क्यों मिलना चाहिए? दैट्स व्हाई ऑन परचेजेस व्हिच इज लेविएबल टू exempted ड्यूटी, मतलब जीरो रेटेड ड्यूटी है, नॉट जीरो रेटेड एसेट जहां पे एग्जेम्प्टेड है, तो फिर उस एग्जेम्प्टेड गुड्स और सर्विस के ऊपर आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. ठीक है, दैट इज द स्कीम अंडर जीएसटी. नाउ वील अंडरस्टैंड द फीचर्स. ये थियोरेटिकल एस्पेक्ट है, बट लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड इन ब्रीफ. जैसे वी वर सेइंग कैस्केडिंग इफेक्ट ऑफ सेनवैट के ऊपर फिर से आपको एक्साइज ड्यूटी के ऊपर फिर से वैल्यू ऐड करके वैट पे करना पड़ेगा, वैसा जीएसटी में नहीं है. सो यू आर अवॉइडिंग द कैस्केडिंग इफेक्ट. तो मतलब टैक्स ऑन टैक्स जो लगता था अंडर प्री जीएसटी regime on excise also used to pay VAT, that impact is not there under GST. In GST you don't have to pay tax on the tax again. You have one rate, just charge that rate and do the transaction. So first is avoid this cascading effect. Second, that this is a destination based tax. Okay, GST is a destination based tax. Before this, it was origin based tax. Now GST is a destination based tax. ITC is available on input services and capital goods. As we had seen the first slide itself, आप कैपिटल गुड्स है, आप असेट परचेज कर रहे हो, इसके ऊपर आप डेप्रिसिएशन क्लेम कर रहे हो, इसीलिए आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. इज इट पॉसिबल कि आपका asset, if I give you a credit today, okay, if I give you credit today, you will use it for a long duration, so I will not give you the credit. Is it possible to say that? Not possible. So credit of capital goods also will be available to you. Now tell me one thing. I'll just share an Excel sheet. So now my question is on capital goods. So if I have a capital goods, the value is 1 lakh rupees. I will share the screen just 1 minute. And GST is charged, correct? Because when I buy something, GST will be charged. Say GST is charged on the capital goods, right? So total value is the capital value and GST. Now I will share the screen now. You tell me on what value will you claim the depreciation as per Income Tax Act, and what is the input tax credit which you are eligible to claim. The value of the capital goods is 1 lakh rupees. The supplier or the vendor has charged 18% tax on it. Now the total value is 1,18,000. Now, as per my Income Tax Act, I have to claim depreciation at 10%. So can I claim depreciation of 1,18,000 into 10%? And then next year, say if I'm doing a straight line method every year, can I claim 11,800? 1 lakh is charged for the depreciation. Okay, correct. Om Krishnam has given the correct answer. Depreciation on income tax. Okay, depreciation. Bhumika is saying depreciation as per income tax on total value. Okay, anybody else? Depreciation will be on only 1 lakh. Okay, everybody is saying depreciation will be only on 1 lakh, but only one person, Bhumika, has said that it will be on whole value. Anybody else consenting to the view of Bhumika that depreciation will be on 1,18,000? Sunil Gangadev, you have given a very political answer there, a diplomatic answer saying that depreciation on value of capital goods. Now that is what we are deciding, that what is the value of capital goods. For according to few people it is 1 lakh, and from some other people it is 1,18,000. 1 lakh. Okay. So the law under GST says that भैया आपको दो benefit नहीं मिलेगा. Okay. If you want to claim depreciation on the value of 1,18,000, claim, no problem with us, because when the vendor has charged you GST, if you have capitalized in the books of account total 1,18,000 rupees, अगर आपने capitalization पूरा 1,18,000 पे कर दिया है, then you claim depreciation of 11,800. That is on 1,18,000 you claim the depreciation. But on the other hand, if your value of capital goods is just 1 lakh, which you should take it, saying that you have claimed the credit, you have claimed input tax credit on 18,000 rupees, then you cannot claim depreciation on 1,18,000, because 18,000 का आपको GST ITC मिल रहा है. Correct? If you claim ITC of 18,000, then you cannot take the benefit of GST में भी benefit और income tax में भी benefit, वो नहीं होगा. Then your capitalized value, capital goods value will be 1 lakh, and you have to then claim depreciation of 1 lakh at 10%. Okay, so the law says that we will give you depreciation on capital goods also, but if you are claiming depreciation on the ITC, then don't come to me and ask ITC. If you are claiming ITC, then you claim depreciation only on the value before the ITC. क्योंकि आपको ITC मिल रहा है मतलब उसका benefit मिल गया है. You have taken the benefit of ITC and you don't take the benefit of depreciation. Got it? If depreciation is claimed on tax component, then no ITC can be availed. But if depreciation is claimed only on the value of plant and not on tax component, then ITC can be availed. Correct. Very true. So ITC is basically available on inputs, input services, and capital goods. Then there is a concept of block credit. Block credit का concept we will understand in detail when we read section 17 subsection 5, which says that block credits, that is credits, will not be available to you even if you have used for your business. Fine. Since we are saying that we will use something for the business, so we will not get any benefit on the blocked credits. We're using for our business. Truly, genuinely, you're using it for your business, but still you will not get the credit. So there are specific list called as block credit. So credits will not be available on some things. That is called block credit. Then ITC is used for payment of tax. Why you will keep the ITC? Just to show in your balance sheet, just to be happy that you have a big ITC ledger? No. ITC is used for payment of taxes. Whatever input tax credit you have, that you will utilize for payment of your output taxes. Then ITC is not available when tax is not payable. That is, if you're doing any exempted supply or any supply on which the rate is GST is not payable, then we will not be able to claim the credit. Exception is zero rated supply. Okay, what is zero rated supply? Export is zero rated supply. Correct. Supply made to SEZ is also zero rated supply. Both are correct. There are two types of zero rated supply. One is export and one is supply made to a SEZ unit or a SEZ developer. So any export of goods or services, not necessarily that you should export only good. You can export services also. So when you do export of goods or services, or you make any kind of a supply of goods or services to a SEZ unit or a SEZ developer, both export and SEZ, either, and of course for goods and services both. Any exports you make and any SEZ you make supply to SEZ unit, these two are treated as zero rated supply. Now, why is this exception? Why is there an exception that ITC is not available when tax is not payable? And similarly, when you do export and SEZ, you don't pay tax. But it's saying as exception, which means that your ITC is available. Why is that so? Because even in exemption, you're not paying taxes. And when you call it zero rated supply, there also there is no GST payable. Why is that so? That credit is available only when you have called them. But when government says that, okay, you make supply, but credit will still be available to you. So why is there an exception, do you think? Promote export. Correct. So to promote exports, to promote SEZ supply, they have given a special name to such supply which we make as exports and which we do any kind of supply to SEZ. They are called as zero rated supply. So they are not under exempt supply. Okay. They are coming under the category of zero rated supply. When it is zero rated supply, input tax credit is available. But when it is exempt supply, input tax credit is not available. Okay. So that is on zero rated supply. Next is on one-to-one correlation not required, which means if you have taken credit of 100 rupees on one product and credit of another product 20 rupees, now you have manufactured a product wherein the first product you have used completely, second product you have used partly. So will you get part credit or will you get full credit? You will get the full credit. आपको पार्ट बाय पार्ट वन टू वन कोरिलेशन रखने की जरूरत नहीं है. Input tax credit is like a total dump. Whatever you purchase will go to that input tax credit like register. लेकिन segregation is there between central tax, state tax, and IGST tax. But within the central tax, you don't have to maintain invoice-wise details. You have to just have the records and claim the credit. When you have to utilize the credit, justification की जरूरत नहीं, because once you have followed the provisions of the law and taken the credit rightly, then that becomes a part of the total credit. उसमें segregation या one to one correlation जरूरत नहीं है. Uh, is the voice better now, Om Krishna? Just 1 minute. So one to one correlation. Then one to one correlation is not required. Then the next point is IGST is core for interstate. Okay, when you do any interstate transaction, to which state you will pay the GST. So that's why there is a IGST model. in IGST model, what is happening is the credit is available to you whenever you make any supply. Then the IGST is collected. The IGST is collected like a in between transition, that when you are having credits of all the credits within the state, that is called as the CGST and SGST credit what you have. Now you are making a IGST transaction. This credit has to go to that state. Now to which state it has to go, that's the reason IGST will be charged. So IGST charge, and then you will claim the credit. Okay, so the CGST and SGST gets converted as a IGST transaction, and that will go to that respective state, whoever is claiming the IGST credit. Both taxable and exempt supply are possible. That it's not that if you're making only taxable supply, you should make only taxable supply, you cannot make exempt supply. Credit will not be available. No, credit will still be available, but in such case, what you have to do, you have to claim proportionate credit. Okay, so wherever there are common inputs, proportionate ITC attributable to taxable supply is available. That was basics on inputs. Now, inputs and input services, we have to understand this very carefully, that when you have inputs, when you have inputs which is used for business purposes, whether inputs are used for business purposes, you have to see, because only those inputs which you are using for business purposes, you can claim the credit. So are you using the inputs for business purposes? Yes, then ITC is available. If you are not using it for your business purposes, then ITC is not available. So only those ITC app is not working. Deepak P. Jain, one moment. Okay, so any input which we are using for business purposes, there we have to say if it is for business purposes, then the credit is available. If it is for non-business purposes, then credit is not available. And if it is commonly used for business and non-business, then you can claim only credit which is attributable to business, and which is not for business, that cannot be claimed. So we have to claim proportionate credit when we have inputs which is commonly used for business and non-business purposes. Okay. So if it is used for business purposes, claim. If it is not, don't claim. Similarly, one is business and one is taxable. It can be for business, but it could be exempt. So it is not a taxable supply. There also we cannot claim the credit. So firstly, it should be used for business. Is it used for business? Yes, claim the credit. Not used for business, don't claim credit. After that, check the second test, that even if you're using for your business, are you making taxable supply? Yes, claim the credit. If it is for non-taxable, do not use the credit. If you're using for both taxable and exempt supply, similar case like how you're using for business and non-business purposes, similar situation is when you're using it for taxable and exempt supplies. There also, on the claim credit only on the basis of ratio turnover which is attributable to common credit. Claim credit on a proportionate basis. Now, what are the important definitions? One is capital goods. What is capital goods? Goods on which value, which if it is capitalized in the books of accounts. Simple. Abhimanyu, Zoom chat is enabled. That's how I'm able to see your chat. What is the issue in Zoom chats? BOS app, I understand. Okay. I'm not receiving any questions from BOS app. I'm receiving only on Zoom. So you are good to chat here. Okay. So what is capital goods? Simple definition that whatever you capitalize in your books of accounts and which you are using or want to intend to use it for your business for the future also, that is called as capital goods. So capital goods are simply goods which are capitalized in the books of accounts, which means they are not expensing it off. You are aware of the what is called as capitalizing and expensing. You have read in your accounts, right? What is capitalizing and what is expensing? What do you mean by when you see this definition? It says that goods, capital goods means those goods, the value of which is capitalized in the books of accounts. What do you mean by capitalized in the books of accounts? Capitalizing, correct, which is no. Okay, okay, let me get some more responses. Capitalizing is adding to the balance sheet. Very true. So capitalizing means adding it to your capital. Capital means balance. So whenever you capitalize some asset, you're adding it to the balance sheet. And expensing it off means writing it off, expensing it off in the P&L. So if you buy a asset, okay, and say the value of the asset is 3,000 rupees and the life is 5 years. Okay, so you think that okay, it is there for 5 years, so I should capitalize it because generally any asset which for which the life is more than 1 year, we will capitalize it. Now, for this asset, in my example, you have bought a small asset, the value is 3,000 rupees. Now, the life of it is 5 years. Now, you thought that why should I capitalize? I'll expense it off. So, if you have expended off an asset, that will not be called as a capital asset. So, only those assets which you capitalize will be called as capitalizing of an asset on which you will charge profit and loss account. You will charge something called as a depreciation. That depreciation will show it as an expense. Okay. So somebody was saying that adding to the value of assets, somebody was saying, uh, okay, showing in the P&L is not a capitalized asset. Whatever you show in your uh, balance sheet, that is only your capitalized asset. So only those assets which you are capitalizing is called as capital goods. Now that example of 3,000 rupees which has been expensed off, that is not expense. That's not a capital goods. That's a input purchases. So that is GST on inputs that you cannot treat as capital goods because you have not utilized. Now these capital goods should be used for the purpose of business. Second example is exempt supply. We know what is exempt supply, any good which is exempted. But that doesn't stop there. It means supply of any goods or services which are rate of tax or which may be wholly exempt from tax or any which could be exempt, wholly exempt either under section 11 of the CGST Act or section 6 of the IGST Act. And it also includes, very important, it also includes non-taxable supply. We know that five petroleum products and uh, alcoholic liquor for human consumption is not liable to GST because it is not getting covered under the definition of supply itself. So such non-taxable supply also is to be added into the definition of exempt supply. So exempt supply is very vast. It's not that just where the government has decided that this good should be exempted, it's exempt supply, not like that. So exempt supply means any supply of goods or services which attracts nil rate of tax and which may be wholly non-taxable. Okay, so non-taxable supply also are called as exempt supply. तो क्या उसके ऊपर भी क्रेडिट रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा? हाँ, if you have common credit, then even on non-taxable supply you have to reverse the input tax credit. Input means input goods, input services, we have understood. Input in relation to registered person. So input tax credit के लिए first condition is you should be a registered person. If you are not registered, then whatever the vendor charges GST, that you have to take it as your cost because उसके ऊपर आपको credit नहीं मिलेगा. Once you are registered under GST, only then you can claim the input tax credit. So an unregistered person is there. Now he's bought some goods, okay, and he wants to use it for his business. He's starting his business in next month. He started. Can he claim the credit? Because he thought he will take the registration once he crossed the threshold of 20 lakhs. That will happen after 6 months. So I will not take the registration now, but I want to use it for my business. Can he claim the credit? Ayushi Mehta is saying, yes, you can claim the credit. The question is very simple that I am not registered today, but I purchased some goods and I'm using it for my business. And I will claim it in the future. Can I claim it today? That's the question. Then I will do because all these goods, I will use it for my business and this business will eventually grow. So can I claim the credit? Correct. So you cannot claim the credit because to claim the credit, first you should be registered. So the threshold limit of 20 lakhs, what we have seen there also, and in other cases also, if you are having a thing that you are registered, you use for your business, that is secondary. First primary condition is you should be registered under GST. So a unregistered person cannot claim the credit. अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन को क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा, सिर्फ एक रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन ही जीएसटी का क्रेडिट क्लेम कर सकता है. You're right. So ITC in relation to registered person means the central tax, state tax, integrated tax. All of this can be claimed on any supply of goods or services made to him and includes IGST charge on import, जब हम import करते हैं IGST, that is also input tax credit. Any taxes paid under reverse charge mechanism under 9(3) and 9(4), both 9(3) and 9(4) credit is available. Then the tax payable under the provision of 5(3) and 5(4), that is under the IGST Act also, any reverse charge what you pay, that is also claimable as a credit. All of this is claimable as a credit. Then the tax payable under provisions of 9(3) and 9(4) of the state act, because if there is a interstate, then IGST RCM you will pay. If it is an intrastate, you will pay RCM both under CGST Act and under the SGST Act. Okay. Then the tax payable under the provisions of 7(3) and 7(4) of the UTGST Act. Matlab, the law has thought over and then mentioned that yes, the input tax credit is payable, but does not include the tax paid under the composition levy. मतलब ITC किसका मिलेगा? You will get credit of everything, but any taxes you pay to a composition dealer, that credit you will not be available to you. So मतलब when I'm importing, I'm paying customs duty and IGST. That IGST I can claim as a credit, but customs duty portion I cannot claim it. Okay, then anybody who is charging me anything, I can claim it. But when I'm the tax payable under RCM, the output is different, but input can be claimed. So whenever I pay reverse charge, that can be claimed as a credit. So that is the definition of input tax credit. Then taxable supply means a supply of goods or services which is leviable to tax. That is the definition of taxable supply. Zero rated supply, we understood this, that it is a export of goods or services and supply of goods or services to both to a SEZ developer or a SEZ unit. So it could be export of goods or services provided to a developer or a SEZ unit. Now, since we know the background definitions, now let us understand the sections. Whether these sections are important, yes, it's important to remember. First, primarily is section 16. Section 16 is the main section to claim the credit. It says that section 16 talks about the eligibility conditions for the credit. Then you might have used the credit for business or business purposes, used it for personal or official purposes. All of that will get covered under section 17. Then section 18 says availability of credit in special circumstances. So whenever there is special circumstances, then the credit is available or not available. That will be mentioned in section 16. Then section 19 is talking about taking ITC in respect of inputs and capital goods sent to job worker. So when you send some goods to a job worker, how to claim it, that is contained in section 19. Then section 20 is manner of distribution of credit by a ISD, by a input service distributor. So any manner of attribution of credit by a ISD is covered under section 20. Then if any credit is distributed, then that will get covered under section 21. Okay, so these are the important provisions which we will cover under input tax credit. So who is first starting with section 16.1? Section 16.1 starts with input tax credit, which means that a person who is registered under GST, and if he's availing or taking some goods or services to be used from the context of business. So any goods or services which is used or intended to be used. So two conditions you have to satisfy under section 1, say under section 16.1, that you should be registered and you should buy such goods or services which you are using in the course of business, then you are eligible to take the credit. Such ITC is created in the electronic credit ledger. तो मतलब क्या हुआ, अगर मैं किसी से कोई सब when I buy something and I am using it in the course or furtherance of business. Okay. Now there is a proprietor. A proprietor buys some goods for his business. Okay. He is a trader of toys. He buys some toys. He is registered. So can he get the credit of that? Yes, he will get the credit. Now he buys the toys for his personal use, for his people at home. Can he claim the credit in that scenario? Shoaib is saying it is blocked. Is it blocked actually? Blocked credit are there under section 17.5. Under block credit, will you find this? No, right? So you will not find it under block credit also. The conditions for claiming credit says that you have to be registered and you should be using it for your business. If you do not use for your business, then you have to reverse the ITC to that extent. So only that credit which is not blocked and you're following all the additional conditions, then the credit is eligible and that credit is claimable. Now, such ITC is created in the electronic credit ledger. So we have something called as a electronic credit ledger, electronic cash ledger, electronic liability register. So whatever credit we take, that will go and get accumulated in the electronic credit ledger. Okay. So we know that credit is claimable. Now, what are the conditions to claim the credit? The conditions to claim the credit is given under section 16.2. So 16 ka har ek section you have to remember because sub-classification matters in this section. In other sections, other matters, you just mention the section number that is sufficient. But in this section 16, you have to remember even the subsections. Okay. What are the conditions for claiming ITC? There are 6 conditions which you have to satisfy. I will just explain you what are the 6 conditions in detail. But for our reference for now, for your remembrance purposes, you will need to know what are the what are the conditions for claiming credit. If some question comes like that, what will be your answer? The following are the conditions for claiming credit. First one, paying taxes. You have to have that document where tax is paid by the supplier. So what will that instrument be? So you should be having the tax paying document. Now, what is the tax paying document? It could be a tax invoice or a debit note. So you should be having this tax paying document to claim the credit. First condition. Second condition is invoice should be uploaded in the GSTR 2B. In your GST, the vendor should raise the invoice, upload it in the GSTR 1, and it should appear in your GSTR 2B. That is one of the conditions in the Act itself. Before, there were various other confusions that it was not in the Act, it was there only in the rules. So, lot of litigation were going on. But now it is clear that invoice, what is uploaded by the supplier and appearing in your 2B, only that you can claim. And then you should actually receive the goods. The goods or services should be actually received. That is the condition number 3. Fourth condition is ITC should not be restricted. ये credit restricted नहीं होना चाहिए. How it is restricted, we'll come to that. Fifth condition is ITC levied on supply is actually paid to the government. So supplier हमको supply कर रहा है वो actual में government को tax pay कर रहा है. And the last condition is claim ITC by filing GST or 3B. ये सब conditions satisfied हो गए. Once you are satisfied that yes, these 5 conditions are satisfied, then you will have to claim ITC by filing GST or 3B. Okay. 6 conditions, they are there under section 16.2. 16.2 will give a bifurcation of what all these conditions are there. So we'll understand these 6 conditions. The first condition is you should be in possession of a tax paying document. Okay. What is this tax paying document? What we should have? We should be having a invoice. Okay. Invoice or revised invoice issued by the supplier. So what is this tax paying document also has been defined in the rules. First, they said that what is a tax paying document? So first you can have invoice or revised invoice. Second is invoice issued by the recipient receiving good. So what are we saying when we saying tax paying document is required under 16.2A? It could be an invoice by the supplier, or if he's revising the invoice, then the revised invoice. Then invoice issued by the recipient. So if there is any reverse charge on which you're paying taxes and which you want to claim the credit, only that you claim the credit for. Okay. So invoice issued by the recipient under RCM. So when you're paying RCM, supplier के invoice में तो GST नहीं रहेगा. So it is the recipient who has to pay. So the recipient has to raise a self invoice. So that is called as invoice issued by the recipient receiving goods or services from unregistered supplier along with proof of payment of tax. Tax जो आप pay करोगे, that proof is required, and then invoice where you are raising as a recipient. That is the tax paying document. What is a third is a tax paying document is a debit note. Debit note is one of the tax paying document. Bill of entry, because in bill of entry, what do you have? What is a bill of entry? Bill of entry is a document when you file, when you're clearing any goods from customs authorities. So when you have to import something, you have to file a bill of entry. In that bill of entry, the description and the HSN of the goods will be mentioned. Then the applicable tax will be levied. So customs duty, can you claim? Documents issued by an input service distributor. Whenever a ISD produces something, that is a input service distributor invoice that can be claimed. Payment made by purchase. Yeah, those conditions are there. We will come to that. But we are saying what are the conditions under 16.2. Then we'll go to 16.3 and proviso to 16.4. 16.2 second proviso, that also will come. So what are the documents? So customs duty, what we pay on that, we don't get the credit. But any GST, what is there? What will be the GST? IGST. So that IGST, you can claim the credit basis the bill of entry. Then document issued by a input service distributor. Who is the input service distributor? A person can register himself as a special category of person. That special category is called as input service distributor. Input service distributor is one who distributes the credit कि उसका एक ऑफिस में सभी इनपुट्स ले लेगा and then he will distribute to various branches on a formula basis. So this person who distributes the credit is called as a input service distributor. So that is also a valid document to claim the credit. And then no ITC of tax paid towards demand involving fraud. जब आपने कुछ taxes pay कर दिया है officer IIT officer have collected taxes from you for doing fraud. Now for this, you collect it from your customer. For that, credit will not be available because specifically Rule 36(3) says that no ITC of taxes paid towards demand involving fraud. You can have demand for fraud cases and for non-fraud cases. If it is for fraud cases, then credit is not available because they specifically said that invoice no ITC of tax paid towards demand involving fraud. So where any demand is there for collecting fraud, that credit will not be available. And when we're saying revised invoice, can any person give revised invoice? कि ठीक है मेरे से गलती हो गई है. Can I give a revised invoice in such case? Instead of mentioning 1 lakh rupees, I mentioned 10,000 rupees. Can I give a revised invoice now for that 10,000 rupees? Is it possible under GST? No. So when you're saying no, then what is this concept of revised invoice? Revised invoice is a concept कि जब एक बंदे ने सेल किया है and he is applied for the registration, लेकिन registration आने में time लग रहा है. So from the date of his application till he gets the registration, he will do business, correct? Because he's an ongoing businessman and he is not crossed the threshold limit. So once he reaches the threshold limit, तब तक he can apply for the registration and do the normal business. So when he is a new registered person and he's applied for the registration, तब whatever transaction is taking place from the date of his application of registration till he gets the registration, तब तक के टाइम में जो भी वो इनवॉइस रेस करता है उसको रिवाइज कर सकता है बिकॉज he will get the registration effective from the date of his application. तो इस ड्यूरेशन पे जो भी है that taxes he will pay. Now, the vendor, the customer should get the credit for it. How will they get the credit? Because when he supplied that time, he did not have the GSTI number. So he got the GSTI number late. So only in such situation, he can do a revised invoice. So only in case where a new registered person is there who has applied for the registration and his GST number is due, only in such situation, he can revise the invoice. Once he revises, then he can claim the credit, and once that big credit will be available. So revised invoice is available only for a new registrant, not for all the cases. Clear? So revised invoice is not possible in routine manner. It's only possible in case of a special cases. For that, we could issue credit note or debit note. Correct. So apart from this, if anybody has made a mistake, they want to revise it, they have to issue a credit note or a debit note. IST provisions. Luckily, input service distributor ke provisions is dealt for you in final. But for now, you have to remember that any document issued by your input service distributor, you can claim the credit. Now, what are the requirements of an invoice? It should have GSTI number of the supplier and recipient. When they ask that, what are the basic requirements in a invoice basis which you can credit? You have to mention that it should be, it should have GSTI of the supplier and recipient. Second, it should have description of the goods. It should have total value of supply. It should have the amount of tax what is charged, and it should have place of supply in case of an interstate supply. So apart from that, other descriptions are there. But when you see any invoice, this is a format also which I've attached, that in case of a credit to be claimed, basic requirements are that these 5 things should definitely be there. Somebody was trying to ask a question. No question. You're clear with the basic minimum requirements. So these are the requirements which are compulsory required in a invoice. Then we'll go to second condition, which is details of invoice or debit note should be uploaded in GSTR1 or IFF and communicated in GSTR2B to a recipient. Okay. So before getting into it, there are some questions. For what? For that we can issue debit. Okay, clear, sir. So in place of supply is mandatory in GST invoice or optional. Wherever it is a interstate transaction, because if it is intrastate, their place of supply is not required. I'll go to the previous slide to show you the format of the invoice. Whenever there is a interstate supply, their place of supply is mandatory because you will charge IGST, sir. Now that IGST has to go to that respective government. Now for which government it has to go, decide that IGST, whenever you are charging, you have to mention the place of supply. So this is the format of a proper invoice which you should use. So whenever supplier is mentioning the address and he's charging IGST, in that case, place of supply is mandatory. Once you place of in the supply in the invoice, then your returns also you mentioned correctly. That's why the requirement is that in case of a interstate transaction, place of supply is compulsorily required. So we're discussing on first condition, we understood. Now the second condition to claim the input tax credit is what is given in 16 to double A. It says that firstly, to understand this, we have a diagram where ITC on invoices are debit notes which have been furnished by their suppliers in the GSTR1 or IFF and reflecting in the GSTR2B of the receipt. It means that when you're purchasing something, the vendor has to upload that in his GSTR1. Okay, just first condition of having the invoice is not sufficient. He will raise the invoice to you. That's fine. You have the first condition satisfied. Okay, आपके पास invoice है. But second condition is just invoice is not sufficient. You need something more. What is that something more? The vendor will have to upload the invoice in his GSTR1. When he uploads the invoice in GSTR1, he will mention the GSTI number. When he's supplying it to you, he will mention your GST number. Now, when this GSTIN number is mentioned, it will reflect in your GSTIN as a column in a statement called as GSTR2B. So, supplier will raise it in GSTR1 and it will appear to you in your GSTR2B. If it appears, then you can claim full credit. Okay, full credit can be claimed. If it doesn't appear, or if he is not furnished the return, when he will not appear, if he is not furnished the GSTR1 correctly, or if he is not furnished the GSTR1 itself, then it will not be a credit which you can claim. Okay, सिंपल GSTR1 अपलोड किया, आपके GSTR2B में आ गया, आप क्रेडिट क्लेम कर लोगे. अगर 2B में नहीं आया तो आप क्रेडिट नहीं क्लेम करोगे. Now what is this IFF? Wherever I'm mentioning GSTR1, वहां पे बगल में IFF भी है. ये IFF क्या है? So can you explain the definition of debit note with example? Sure. Debit note means a document which has been uploaded by the supplier in equivalent to an invoice. Invoice is being raised. Now the value in the invoice needs to get revised upwards. There has to be a upward revision of the invoice. Then the supplier will raise a debit note. If he has charged 100 rupees for a goods, now he's supposed to raise it for 110. So in that case, that extra 10 rupees, okay, 100, then extra 10 rupees, he cannot amend the invoice. For that, he will raise a debit note for that 10 rupees. So what is the value of supply? The value of supply is 110 rupees, but he has raised it only for 100 rupees. For the differential, what is to be raised, that is called as a debit note. IFF invoicing furnishing facility under QRMP. Yes, everybody is aware of it. Very nice. So what is QRMP scheme? QRMP scheme means quarterly return monthly payment scheme. In that cases, quarterly they do only payment. Fine. Quarterly return and monthly payment. So they're doing monthly payment and quarterly return is being filed. So for such people, when they're doing only monthly payment, how will somebody who's buying from them claim the credit? So they will start fighting with them. So that's why in case of a quarterly filers, the government has given an option saying that if your customer wants the credit, you don't file the full GSTR1, file a invoicing filing facility wherein the customer can claim the credit once you file the IFF. Because you will file your quarterly returns at the end of the quarter, but he will not get the credit. So that's why you have an option to file a statement called as IFF through which the credit is passed on. Okay. So we are clear with condition here. Now, just to give some more clarity on this aspect, how is the linkage happening that for few people who are not aware of the GSTR2B mechanism, Mr. A sells goods. When he sells goods to Mr. B, he files GSTR 1. Correct? Because once he's selling something, now the returns what will be filed, you will get slowly used to it. GSTR 1, GSTR 2B, GSTR 3B. So when you sell some goods to a person who is registered, you will file GSTR 1. And if you are quarterly filer, then you will file IFF. Okay. So you will file GSTR 1 or IFF. That info will appear in the GSTR 1 of Mr. A. It will get reflected in GSTR 2B of Mr. B, because when you're filing GSTR 1, invoice wise details you will mention invoice number, amount, GSTIN of the receiver. Then that info from GSTR 1 gets reflected in GSTR 2B of Mr. B. Then from there, what happens? He will utilize that credit, okay, while he is filing his GSTR 3B. So using this GSTR 2B data, GSTR 3B is filed. Amount of ITC on purchases gets credited to the electronic credit ledger. So once you file the GSTR 3B, the amount what was appearing in 2B will come to your electronic credit ledger. So that's how the flow of GSTR 1 from the supplier goes to GSTR 2B. From GSTR 2B, it gets converted to GSTR 3B. Okay. Then the second condition is still continuing. Invoices, but we have to note that whatever is in 2B, can you claim credit? Now we said that in this slide, we said that whatever is in appearing 2B, full ITC can be claimed. Can we claim full ITC? No, because as we are aware, even if something is appearing in my GSTR 2B, those credit which are not available, that is 17.5. We will go and understand the 75, but now it is very important to understand that any credit which is appearing as blocked credit, okay, 17.5 credits are not to be considered for claiming ITC, even though it is furnished by the suppliers. Okay, invoices on which ITC is not available, that is under 17.5, those credits you cannot claim, even though it's appearing in your GSTR 2B. However, full ITC can be claimed. So one extreme is it is appearing, you can't claim. Second is some credits will not be available in your GSTR 2B. What are those credits? IGST, what you're paying on imports. When you import, you pay customs duty and IGST. That you don't have to match it with your GSTR 2B, because the provisions doesn't talk about this. They don't say that you have to match the following credits, which IGST paid on imports, documents issued under reverse charge mechanism, and credit which is received under ISD. So these three things you cannot claim the credit. You can claim the credit even if it is not appearing in your GSTR 2B. Three things: IGST paid on imports, documents issued under reverse charge because their supplier is unregistered or supplier is not paying, receiver is paying. So definitely that will not come under your GSTR 2B. So documents issued under reverse charge, you only have to claim it. And third is credit received under ISD. By what is ISD? Input Service Distributor. So these three credits, even if it is not appearing in your 2B, you can claim it. But credit which is blocked, you cannot claim it. So that's an example. Say total ITC in the breakdown in my books of accounts is 100 rupees. I will bifurcate that into 16 to AA, whether it's compliant, and I will also check whether it is eligible or ineligible by 17.5. So I have to check that first. Say there is a credit of rupees 10 which is appearing in my GSTR 2B, but it is ineligible. That credit cannot be claimed. Fine. Then 16 to AA, what I can check, I have to check the compliance. From this 70 rupees, I have checked whether, from the 90 rupees, because 10 is blocked, 90 is the balance here. From the 90, 70 is appearing in my GSTR 2B. This is eligible. Your 16.2A is not complied, which means details are not available in my GSTR 2B, that I cannot claim. So 100 rupees appearing in my books. Of that, 10 is block credit. Of the balance 90, eligible credit of 70, I will claim it. 20 is not eligible, I cannot claim it. Fine. Now take the example of case one. Oh, I should have hidden the answer, but okay, I've given the answer here. Supplier has furnished his form GSTR1. Okay. Firstly, the condition is in his books of accounts, he has claimed credit of 8.4 lakhs. Okay. 8.4 lakhs is a credit in his books. Now the supplier has furnished in form GSTR1 80 invoices involving ITC of rupees 6 lakhs as on the due date of furnishing of details of outward supplies, which means of this 8.5 lakhs what I have purchased, only 6 lakhs worth of invoices those vendors have uploaded. So how much is my eligible ITC? 6 lakhs. Second scenario I will just share now. Amount on which invoices are filed. Correct. Because only those invoices are uploaded. Very true. Second scenario, suppliers, same 8.4 lakhs is my purchases as a books. Suppliers are furnished GSTR1 or for 18 invoices involving ITC of rupees 7 lakhs. So then how much is my ITC? 7 lakhs. Because to the extent of the value, I can claim the credit. Now in third scenario, I have 8.4 lakhs of credit. Suppliers have furnished in GSTR1 75 invoices involving ITC of 8.5 lakhs. So in that case, why can't, of course, the answer here is you'll claim a credit of 8.4 lakhs. The question is why I can't claim 8.5 lakhs as the credit. 0.1 lakh, 10,000 is exceeding the total eligible ITC. Correct. But it is appearing in my GSTR 2B, right, Om Krishna? So why can't I claim what is appearing in my GSTR 2B? Because the condition says I have to claim what is appearing as GSTR 2B. Okay. So the correct answer is yes, your eligible ITC can't exceed the ITC as per book. So your ITC cannot exceed the balance in your books. That's why you can claim only the ITC of 8.4. Say by mistake, if your ITC is used and credit has been uploaded. So you should not claim the credit. You should check whether the GSTR to be credit matches with the invoices what is there in your books. If somebody by mistake gives you credit, do not claim it because they could reverse it subsequently. Then your credit, what you're claiming now, can get reversed. Okay, so be very careful. Do not claim credit which is not yours. GSTR 2B is not the only source. You have to see your books and then account it. So we understood condition number 2. Now condition number 3 is actual receipt of goods or services. So I'm mentioning the section also. Section 16 ke sections we have to remember. The subsections also we will have to remember. So third condition is you should have actually received the goods or services, which means that the should have recipient should have received the goods by his own or his agent or any other person on his behalf. So goods should be received by the person or his agent or any other person on his behalf to claim the ITC. So what does it mean if the recipient has paid advance to the supplier for supplying it in the future date? Then we know that on advance for goods, we don't pay GST, but for advance of services, we have to pay. So when you paid advance for supply in the future, then ITC is not available because from the supplier side, he is falling under the time of supply, so he will collect GST. But from the recipient side, you should not claim the ITC because this condition is not satisfied. You have only made the payment, but you have not actually received the service. When we are not receiving the service, we should not claim the credit. Okay, the condition is very clear. Just by payment is not sufficient. पेमेंट के साथ पेमेंट के साथ एक्चुअल सर्विस रिसीव होना जरूरी है. अगर एक्चुअल सर्विस रिसीव नहीं हुआ है तो फिर आप क्रेडिट नहीं ले सकते हो. सो एडवांस जब हम पे करते हैं, बी केयरफुल. जस्ट बाय पेइंग एडवांस डजंट मीन दैट यू आर रिसीविंग द सर्विस, सो क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. बट bill to ship to transactions is permitted. So when we say actual receipt of goods, bill to ship to transaction में क्या actual receipt होता है? Bill to ship to में actual receipt will happen to the other person. Same chart which we had discussed, I'll bring in again here. Ganesh Traders is billing to Maruti Traders. Now the third condition said that now Maruti Traders said कि भाई हमको सप्लाई मत करना, आप डिलीवर किसको करना? प्राइम हार्डवेयर जो तमिलनाडु में है. So he is supplied to Prime Hardware. The third condition says that in this case, it will be that goods का deliver मुझे नहीं हो रहा है. But third condition बोलता है that in case of claiming ITC, the goods should have been actually received. The place of supply तो आपने मारुति ट्रेडर्स बोल दिया है, लेकिन goods physically deliver मुझे नहीं हुआ है. How can I claim credit of this then? When Prime Hardware receives input, then claim it. Prime Hardware's correct. So, in case of a bill to ship to transaction, when it is billed to me but shipped on my instruction to the third person, it is deemed that the person to whom it is billed, it is delivered. So in this provision of this third condition, they have specifically said that in a bill to ship to transaction, when the goods are delivered at your instruction to the third person, that is deemed to be delivered to you itself, because either it can be delivered to you or to any agent on your behalf. So this third person is like an agent on to whom you are delivering. That is a deemed delivery. Sai Kiran sir, your question is, sir, in non-availment of ITC on advance payment is for goods only or for services? For services only, sir. For goods, you don't pay GST on advance. So there is no question of availment of ITC or non-availment in case of goods. Only in case of services, non-availment is there. On bill to ship, consider the goods are received by the person who has instructed to give the goods on his behalf. Correct. So it is deemed delivery in that case. So goods are deemed to be delivered as received by Maruti traders. Okay. When it is delivered to Prime, then this condition will be deemed to be satisfied. Fourth condition, details of ITC in respect of the supply are not restricted under section 38. So 16(2)AA, 16(2)BA, these are the important points because these are all amended. So A, B, C, D tha, then AA aaya, then BA aaya, which means these are all amended sections. Details of ITC which are claiming should not be restricted under section 38, say 16(2)BA. Now, when you have GSTR 2B, in 2B, you will have two portions. One is that on which ITC is available to the recipient, and second is that on which ITC cannot be available. Okay, so GSTR 2B will give you the details saying that, okay, supplier has to do his work, he has done it. But then you will have two portions. One is on which ITC is available to the recipient, and second is on which ITC is not available to the recipient. Why it will not be available? Because section 38 says that there are few instances जब आपको credit नहीं मिलेगा, when ITC is not available in respect of inward supplies, details of which has been furnished by the registered person who is a new registrant. अगर एक person है who is a new registered person, he is supplying it to you. So for some period, that credit will not be available to you. Okay. Or who has defaulted in payment of tax. So basically what the government is trying to say is we will give you the GSTR 2B details, but some persons will be there who will not be complying with the GST. So for that persons, we will not give credit to you. Who are those persons who are newly registered? They may be compliant, but whether they will continue to be compliant, they don't know. So they're blocking it. So it's like a kind of blocking the credit, that who is a new registrant, if you're purchasing from him, credit will not be available. Second is who has defaulted in payment of tax for prescribed period. Third is whose output tax payable as per GSTR 1. So we know GSTR 1 is outward supply, GSTR 3B is your return. Now, whatever details you disclose in 1, that should ideally form part of your 3B. बट ऐसा नहीं होता है. कभी कभी क्या करते लोग, GSTR 1 में ज्यादा टर्नओवर दिखा देते हैं बट टैक्स कम पे करते हैं. सो इन दैट केसेस your output tax payable as per 1 exceeds the output tax paid in 3B. In that case also, credit will be blocked. Then who has availed ITC of an amount that exceeds the credit that can be claimed as per GSTR 3B. अब किसी का ITC है, who has availed ITC for an amount that exceeds the credit that can be availed by him as per GSTR 2B. अब GSTR 2B में जितना है उससे ज्यादा आपके क्रेडिट क्लेम कर का वायलेशन किया है. इसका मतलब क्या है? यू हैव टू डिस्क्लोज पे एटलीस्ट 1% थ्रू योर कैश, बट उसको भी आपने वायलेट कर दिया है. बिकॉज देर आर सम कैटेगरी ऑफ पीपल, जब 86B हम पढ़ेंगे तब समझेंगे, देर आर स्पेसिफिक कैटेगरी ऑफ पीपल हु हैव टू पे द टैक्स एटलीस्ट 1% ऑफ द टैक्स थ्रू कैश. पूरा का पूरा और क्रेडिट से पे नहीं कर सकते. सो फॉर सच पर्सन हु हैज डिफॉल्ट दैट रूल, अब उससे पूछ सकते हो, तब भी आपका 38 में आप क्रेडिट नहीं क्लेम नहीं कर सकते हो. और बाय सच अदर क्लास ऑफ पर्सन एज कैन बी प्रिस्क्राइब, मतलब ये 5 क्लास के अलावा विच एवर क्लास विच द गवर्नमेंट फील्स सफिशिएंट, दे कैन ब्रिंग इट अ रूल टू ब्रिंग दैट कैटेगरी. ओके, सो this is the sixth category of people who are whose credit when you claim in the GSTR 2B, they will tell that this credit cannot be claimed as per section 38. लेकिन luckily क्या है मालूम? This is amended, this is being brought into effect, but इसका rule नहीं आया है. तो it is not yet implemented. So it is there in the law, but this is not implemented. Whose turnover exceeds 50 lakhs in a month? Correct. Correct. Whose turnover exceeds 50 lakhs and other criteria is what they have. No, they have to pay at least 1%. So such kind of people who are not fulfilling, तो फिर उनका क्रेडिट आप ले रहे हो तो उनका क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. Okay, so this is there in the law, so you will have to read it because law में तो है, लेकिन इसका provisions rules में नहीं. That's the only thing. These conditions, because this can be asked, saying that what are the conditions basis which, as per section 38, credits which are appearing in GSTR 2B but cannot be claimed. These are the 5 situations, and the 6th one is by any other class of persons as may be prescribed, which you will have to mention. First is who is a new registrant who has defaulted in payment of tax for a specified period of time, whose output tax in one exceeds the 2B, exceeds the 3B, whose availed credit more than what is there in 2B, because 2B में जितना है उतना ही क्रेडिट क्लेम कर सकते हैं, लेकिन इस बंदे ने ज्यादा क्लेम किया है. Or fifth condition is who's defaulted in discharging the tax liability in accordance with Rule 86B. So why these such strict section and strict rule is there is a lot of fake billing happening. What is fake billing? Fake billing is simple that I have supplied to you nothing, but I will raise an invoice to you in the GSTR 1. GSTR 3B में पे नहीं कर फाइल नहीं करूंगा, because if I file then I have to pay taxes. I will just raise an invoice in the GSTR 1. अब आपके GSTR 3B में आ गया. The condition what we read, second condition was it should appear in my GSTR 2B. So once I raise invoice in my GSTR 1, it will appear in your GSTR 2B, basis which you can claim the credit. But actually, did I pay the taxes? I have not paid the taxes. Correct? So then when the government finds कि you have reported in 1 but you have not paid in 3B, तब तक तो the other person has claimed the credit. So to stop that menace, they will identify through the system who has filed 1 but not paid in 3B. You cannot claim credit from him. For him, it will appear in the special category saying that not eligible credit. Okay? Or who has defaulted in payment. मतलब regular में he is defaulting. He is filing his GSTR 1, but for the 3-4 months he is been irregular or not paying the taxes. तब उस बंदे से आप खरीदते हो तो फिर आपका क्रेडिट डाउटफुली रहेगा. So what the government is trying to identify in these scenarios is person who has paid 1 filed one may not pay taxes. The fourth condition, who has claimed credit more than what is in 2B. उसके 2B में eligible था 1 lakh rupees. Now he's taken credit of 3 lakh rupees. तो इसका मतलब ये इसका credit itself is not correct. तो आप उससे परचेज करते हो, we will not get to know his return status, right? But the government has control on his status, so they will analyze the status and tell that anything which you purchase from this is not available to you. Okay, so these are all tightening measures which the government is trying to bring to take away the menace of the बिल ट्रेडिंग और बोगस बिल, फेक बिल केसेस, इन सबको कंट्रोल करने के लिए दे हैव ब्रॉट इन दिस. बट टू इम्प्लीमेंट इन द जीएसटीआर पोर्टल दे आर स्टिल इम्प्लीमेंटिंग, ट्राइंग टू नेविगेट इट, इसलिए इसका रूल्स नहीं आया है. वंस दैट रूल कम्स देन दिस विल बी प्रैक्टिकली अप्लीकेबल ऑल्सो. Okay. Condition 5 is the tax levied on the supply is actually paid to the government. Whatever is the tax levied should be actually paid to the government. The supplier should have actually paid the tax charged on the goods or services for which ITC is being taken, either in cash or by utilizing ITC. So the person who is supplying to you should have actually paid the tax. Okay. Now, but there is a provision through which you can check whether he has filed the returns or no. So in this GSTR 2B, you have a column called return filing status of the supplier. If the return filing status of the supplier is saying filed, then you can claim it. But you don't have to do it on a monthly basis, because monthly you cannot check so many things. appearing, yes, good enough. तो आपके GSTR 2B में आ रहा है, आप क्रेडिट क्लेम कर लीजिए. Then what you will check at the year end is you will availment. I will check it. Now how will that process happen? Will come to know. Something called as a, you will claim the credit. Now supplier should have paid the subject provisions of section 41, which means that section 41 firstly is saying that avail based on self-assist. So how will you do it? 2B mein dekho and claim the credit. That is called self-assist basis. A registered person can avail the credit of eligible ITC as self-assist in his return, and such amount will be credited to his electronic ledger. So government is trying to say that you know how to pay output tax. So similarly, on your self-assessment basis, claim the input tax. Okay, there I will not intervene. Whatever is your output tax, you know. Now you claim the input tax. ठीक है, आपने इनपुट टैक्स क्लेम कर लिया. कैसे क्लेम किया है? GSTR 2B GSTR 2B, your credit is appearing, you have claimed it. Now, tax payable corresponding to such ITC is not paid by the supplier. If the tax payable on such thing is not paid by the supplier, then ITC so availed, what you have availed seeing GSTR 2B will have to be reversed by the said person along with applicable interest. You have claimed the credit. Now you will have to reverse the credit if you get that the vendor has not paid the taxes, and then you can reclaim it. So what is the government trying to say is follow the steps: avail the credit, reverse the credit, and re-avail the credit. Avail, reverse, re-avail. So what will I avail? First is the registered person can claim ITC in 3B basis GSTR 1. मतलब सामने वाले ने GSTR 1 फाइल किया है, basis which it is appearing in 2B, claim the credit. This is step 1. Step 2 is, however, if the supplier does not furnish GSTR 3B, in your GSTR 2B, a column appears whether he has filed it. So you have to check it by the 30th September following the financial year. 24 का जो भी आपने क्रेडिट लिया है, you have to check the status of that invoices in your credit up till September, because Up till September, he can file the returns. So if he has filed the returns for 23-24 up till the September of 2024, then fine. क्योंकि तब तक गवर्नमेंट टाइम देती है कि you can make sure that the vendor files the return. So if the vendor files the return by the 30th September, fine. और सितंबर तक भी उन्होंने फाइल नहीं किया है, then this credit you have to reverse. Q, because the condition is the taxes should be paid to the government. How the taxes are paid? It is paid through GST or 3B. So 3B में पे कर दिया है क्या सितंबर तक देखिए. You see whether it is claimable till September. If he is not filed it till September, then you have to reverse the credit. When you will reverse? In the October month's return, which you will furnish by the 20th November, maximum 30th November तक time दिया है. So if the supplier does not furnish the return for the 3B till the September month, then in the next month you have to reverse the credit. तो हो गया. बट नाउ सितंबर के बाद जब मैं अक्टूबर का रिवाइज किया, फिर नवंबर में पार्टी ने फाइल कर दिया. ठीक है, फर्स्ट हमने रिवर्स किया है, फिर रीअवेल कर सकते हैं. वेयर द सेट सप्लायर सब्सिक्वेंटली फर्निशेस द रिटर्न, the said registered person may re-avail the amount of such credit in his return. Got it? So that's why the provisions of avail, reverse, and re-avail. Any doubts on this? We can explain this in chart with numbers so that you can understand this.
सर कंडीशन नंबर 4 के अंदर न्यू रजिस्ट्रेंट वो भी मतलब आईटीसी, एक बार वो हिंदी में बता दो. कंडीशन 4.
हाँ, एक मिनट. सो कंडीशन 4 क्या बोलता है कि आपके जीएसटीआर 2B में दो कॉलम आएंगे. एक कॉलम रहेगा कि जो आईटीसी आप क्लेम कर सकते हो, और एक और है जो आईटीसी आप नहीं क्लेम कर सकते हो. उसे कहते हैं ऑन विच आईटीसी कैन नॉट बी क्लेम. अब क्यों क्लेम नहीं कर सकते? गवर्नमेंट ने थोड़े क्राइटेरिया सेट किया है कि जब आप नए रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन से खरीदते हो, तब वो रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन को नया रजिस्ट्रेशन दे दिया गया है, लेकिन वो जीएसटी टैक्स में कंप्लायंस करेगा नहीं करेगा नहीं पता है. तो इसलिए वो टाइम लिमिट सेट करेंगे कि किसी नए बंदे से, किसी नए रजिस्टर्ड बंदे से जब आप खरीदते हो, 2-3 मंथ्स उसका जब रजिस्ट्रेशन है, तब तक आप जो भी उसका परचेज करेगा उसका क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. तो गवर्नमेंट देखेगी 3 महीने के बाद वो करेक्ट से टैक्सेस पे कर रहा है, उसके बाद अलो कर देंगे. तो तब तक के लिए तो उसका क्रेडिट ब्लॉक हो जाएगा आपको. सेकेंड कंडीशन जैसे क्या है, जिन्होंने रिटर्न्स फाइल ठीक से नहीं किए हैं, टैक्सेस पे नहीं किए हैं, उनसे जब आप परचेज करोगे तो फिर आपका क्रेडिट नॉन अवेलेबल कैटेगरी में रहेगा.
ओके सर, मतलब न्यू रजिस्ट्रेंट जो है वो उसका 3 मंथ तक नहीं मिलेगा, उसके बाद मिल जाएगा, ऐसा है सर?
एग्जाम्पल दे रहा हूँ, गवर्नमेंट ने टाइम नहीं दिया है, तो वही बोल रहा था, इसको एक्ट में ला दिया गया है लेकिन उसका रूल्स नहीं बनाया. कितने पीरियड तक वो गवर्नमेंट अभी आगे बताएगी.
तो फिर हम ये कैसे पता करेंगे सर, जैसे न्यू रजिस्ट्रेंट है तो उससे आईटीसी नहीं मिलेगा?
वो हमारे जीएसटीआर 2B में पता चलेगा, क्योंकि हमको नहीं पता चलेगा कि उसने रजिस्ट्रेशन कब लिया, ये जानकारी हमको रखने की जरूरत नहीं है. लेकिन जीएसटीआर 2B जो आता है ना,
हाँ जी.
जीएसटीआर 2B में वो अलग कॉलम रहेगा जहां पे वो बोल देंगे कि क्रेडिट नॉट अवेलेबल। अगर उन्होंने लिख दिया कि आईटीसी कैन नॉट बी अवेल, तो आप अवेल नहीं कर सकते हो।
ओके, टू बी में अलग से आएगा कि इसके लिए नहीं मिलेगा?
हाँ, इसीलिए ये टेबल देखा था ना आपने, डिटेल्स ऑफ इनवर्ट सप्लाई दो तरह के होंगे, जिसमें आईटीसी में अवेलेबल है और आईटीसी नॉट अवेलेबल है।
ओके सर, अंडरस्टूड, थैंक यू सर।
Can you explain with example section 41? Yes, I will explain that. Okay. So condition number 4, wherein first is avail the credit. Condition number 5, sorry. Avail the credit, right? And check if taxes has been paid. Okay. So I mentioned 3 columns: GSTR 2B. Okay. First GSTR 1. GSTR 1 of the supplier, because his supplier, what supplier does, based on that it will appear in my GSTR 2B. Now let's mention supplier's compliance. Supplier will do GSTR 1 and he will also do GSTR 3B. Again, this is of supplier. तो सप्लायर का जीएसटीआर 1 और जीएसटीआर 3B कंप्लायंस देखना है, फिर मेरे जीएसटीआर 2B में देखना है, और मेरे कस्टमर, सो दैट इज रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन, ये मेरा कंप्लायंस में देखूंगा। करेक्ट। ये सप्लायर का कंप्लायंस के बेसिस पे मेरा कंप्लायंस देखूंगा, मेरा जीएसटीआर 2B देखूंगा, फिर मैं जीएसटीआर 3B में क्रेडिट लूंगा। नाउ suppose we are talking about the month of September नहीं जाएंगे, December 2023। December 2023 में December 2023 he supplied goods to you, so supplier has filed the GSTR 1, उसमें taxes था 10,000 rupees। okay, so you as a recipient, can you claim the credit of this GSTR 1? Now once he is filed in 10,000 rupees, आपके GSTR 2B में आ गया। now you tell me in GSTR 3B credit, can you claim the credit of 10,000? Yes or no? Yes, you can claim it. So you have claimed 10,000 rupees. Now GSTR 1 जाता है 13th को और GSTR 3B फाइल होता है 20th को। In case of monthly it is 11th, so GSTR 1 is filed by the 11th due date. This is filed by the 11th and this is filed by the 20th, just for your information. So once he files the GSTR 1, you can claim it, because you're not there to check his 3B status, because as soon as it's appearing in 1, you can claim it, because that is the condition of 16(2)AA. Now GSTR 3B, he has filed it. So no problem, your credit is secured. The condition is 3B में file कर दिया है तो मतलब payment भी हो गया है, because without payment we cannot file the GSTR 3. The return, like your income tax return without payment of taxes also you can file it. Later government will give a notice, but in GST that doesn't work. If you have any liability, you have to pay it through your credit or pay it through your cash ledger. तो आपको पेमेंट किए बिना आप रिटर्न फाइल नहीं कर सकते हो. So you have to make the payment, only then you can file. So when I say file, it means payment has been made. So your condition is satisfied. Payment has been made, correct? So payment has been made here. He had purchased it in January 2024. Some goods for which 15,000 was the GST, 15,000 was appearing. Okay, you will claim it. Okay, I'll repeat here. So in January 2024, you have purchased from a vendor for 15,000 rupees worth of goods, 15,000 worth GST worth of goods, and he has filed the GSTR1 and you have claimed it. It is appearing in your 2B, so you will claim it, correct? अभी ये नेटवर्क ठीक है क्या? Okay. So December, he has filed it, your credit is intact. Now January credit you have claimed, but he has not filed it. Okay. Then you purchase something in February also. February, the value was 5,000 rupees. It is appearing in your 2B. And in 3B, credit you have claimed 5,000, but the supplier has not filed the 3B for February also. Okay. So what you will do is you will wait, because the condition says that he has to file his returns. He has to make the payment. Now, if he has not paid and not filed, then your credit, what you are claiming, is doubtful. So what you will do is you will wait for every month, and later by September 24, you will check whether he has filed or not filed. So in September 24, you will see that he has filed returns of 15,000 rupees of this. This becomes filed 15,000 in September 2000, because he can file the return late also. In September 2024, this has been filed. So you don't have to do anything, because you have given, government has given you time till September to check the status whether he's filed or not filed. So in September 24, you'll see that this January, which was not filed, is now getting converted to filed. Filed in September 24. But this is not being filed. So when this is not being filed, what you will do is you will reverse the credit. So credit what you had taken 5,000 rupees, you have an option to reverse the credit. So you will reverse this credit is the second step. So you have to see the status in September and reverse the credit. Okay. So how do you reverse? We'll see in the next class through the actually, I'll show you the portal, how the reversal happens. So we will reverse the credit. So once we reverse the credit, which means that you will go to the vendor, boss, I have paid you taxes, right? But why didn't you file your returns? Because of you, I had to reverse the returns. So I will reverse the returns, reverse the credit, and then say that person for this in November 24, he has filed this. So then what happens? This gets converted as filed. So this reversal, what you have done, you can re-avail. So avail the credit, reverse the credit, and re-avail the credit. This is how you have to practically do it. Okay. Claim the credit, take the credit, reverse the credit, and re-avail the credit. What if he doesn't file in November 2? Then you cannot claim it. Sometime he has to file, right? Because he will have to continue his business. If he's not continuing, then it's your bad luck. You cannot re-avail it at all. If he's closed down the business after selling to you, if he's closed down the business, government is saying that, boss, that is the reason why I made this provision that the supplier should have filed his return and paid taxes to the government. If he's not paid, then you go file, litigate with him. But under GST, you will not get any benefit. Okay, that is what the government is trying to say. If he doesn't file in November, if he files in December, whenever he files, that time claim the credit. Clear? Any doubts on this or any more facts you want to change to understand this basic? Okay. So next. Availment of ITC, sir, it's not in the rule. It is there in the section. It is there since 2022, but it has not been amended through rules. So for your exams, it becomes relevant because it is a new amendment, sir. Yes,
Sir,
Ayushri. Yes,
yes,
please.
I wanted to ask you that if there is a person who is supplying many things, like he's supplying biscuits, he's supplying maida, wafers, many products, like supermarket types.
Okay.
So he's supplying many products at a time. And for example, he got ITC on a biscuit for 5 rupees
Okay.
on the reverse charge.
Reverse
And
charge.
no, sorry, sorry. On ITC, he got ITC of 5 rupees for a packet of biscuit. And now he also sold something else. So can he use the ITC of biscuit in product B? Is the ITC of whole thing, or it is a product to product?
No, ITC is not correlated one to one. So whatever is your business, you have one GST number. In this GSTI number, whatever you purchase goes to your input tax credit. From this business, whatever you sell, that is your outward supply. So any credit can be claimed against any supply. One-to-one matching is not required.
Okay, sir. No, that was my only question.
Sure. So it is like a bucket, a common bucket, you can claim it. Now you might be having it in stock. You have not yet sold that, but you have sold something else. Still, the credit is available.
Okay, thank you, sir.
सर मतलब 30 नवंबर के बाद अगर सप्लायर ने फाइल किया तो आईटीसी मिलेगा या नहीं मिलेगा?
मिलेगा। आपको रिवर्स जो किया है आपने, वो फिर से आप रिक्लेम कर सकते हो।
तो रिक्लेम कब तक कर सकते हैं सर?
रिक्लेम के लिए वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन। रिक्लेम करने के लिए कुछ टाइम लिमिट नहीं है। आपको क्लेम करने के लिए टाइम है। आपने रिवर्स कर दिया, फिर रिक्लेम करने के लिए कुछ टाइम लिमिट नहीं।
कितने भी टाइम तक हम कर सकते हैं?
1 साल, 2 साल, 3 साल के बाद भी आप कर सकते हो।
ओके सर।
ठीक है। सो विल गो टू द नेक्स्ट कंडीशन। कंडीशन नंबर 4 पता चलेगा। कंडीशन नंबर 5, condition number 6. Condition number 6 says that filing of return to claim the credit, which means that इतना सब conditions कर दिया आपने। Now you have satisfied all the conditions. अब conditions को convert करने का time आ गया, which means that you have to bring the credit in your electronic credit ledger. Automatically तो नहीं जाएगा, so you have to do something. That something is filing the return. Now, if you file your GSTR 3B return, then you are availing all the conditions through self-assessment. Government is saying, okay, we have given you these 5 conditions. Now we are trusting you that you have satisfied all the 5 conditions. अगर आपने 5 conditions कर लिया है, तो फिर आपको credit मिलेगा. So the government is saying that once you satisfy all the conditions, then you are eligible to claim the credit. Earlier, when the GST was founded, that time they had a idea that supplier will file GSTR1, then you will get a GSTR2A, your credit will come in 2, then amendments in GSTR1 will happen, then you will file a return in GSTR3, but that did not happen. And then what is actually popular is GSTR1, then the GSTR2A. Before GSTR2B came, there was GSTR2A, then your final return was 3B. Now the 2A also didn't get popular. So now what we are seeing presently is GSTR1, then GSTR2B, and then the final return is 3B. So whatever credits we are filing in our GSTR3B, that we can claim the credit. Now, in terms of the summary of the 6 pointers, what we started off with, that there are 6 conditions. These are the 6 conditions. 16(2)(a), that you should have possessing of a tax invoice. Then 16(2)(a), invoices appearing and uploaded and appearing in GSTR2B. Then 16(2)(b) is actual receipt of goods. 16(2)(c), 16(2)(ba) says ITC should not be restricted. Then 16(2)(c), tax levied on supply is actually paid to the government. And 16(2)(b) says that claim ITC by filing your GSTR 3B. So these are the 6 conditions.
Sir, in petrol bunk, for petrol and diesel are non-GST supplies and lubricants are GST supplies. for availment of ITC and lubricants, is it proportionate required or they can avail fully, sir?
For claiming credit, we have Rule 42 and 43, and even in the diagram I had shown that if there are purchases and sale, if it is one-to-one correlated for that items, then full credit you can claim. But common credits like the rent for that space, consultant bills, they are all called as common credit. Such common credit you can claim only proportionately. But where the purchases are directly linked to the sale, there you can claim full credit.
Okay, sir.
So now, apart from these 6 conditions, we'll see that there are some provisos are after 16.2, 16.3, 16.4 are there. So what are those conditions? Let us see that. Where the goods against an invoice are received in lots, that you will receive the goods in lots, then you can claim the credit only when the last lot is received. Okay. So when you're receiving the goods in pieces, say, my famous example of constructing a lift, when you sell a lift, you can't manufacture and assemble the lift and sell it. You will have to manufacture it and assemble it at the site. So when you sell it, deliver at site, you cannot deliver it all in one shot. You may have to use various shipment. Some shipment will go today, some lorry will go tomorrow, and some third lorry will go the third day. So when can the purchaser claim the credit when the first lorry is received? No. He can claim the credit when the last lot, that is the third lorry, is received. When the full goods are being received, then only he can claim the credit. So that is what the point says, that when goods are against an invoice are received in lots, the registered person shall be entitled to claim the credit when received of the last lot. Payment should be made for the inputs what we are claiming. There's a condition attached to 16.2 which says that when the payments are made to the supplier within 180 days, only then you can claim the credit. So 16.2 conditions we have seen. Provisos to 16.2 says that you have to make payment to your vendor within 180 days. क्रेडिट का कंडीशन सब सेटिस्फाई कर लिया, लेकिन पेमेंट आपने वेंडर को टाइम पे नहीं दिया है, तो फिर आपको क्रेडिट रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा. That you have to make the payment within 180 days from the date of issue of invoice. If you do not make the payment, then reverse the credit. So same thing यहाँ पर भी, if you claim the credit on the assumption that 180 days में payment कर लोगे, पेमेंट नहीं करते हो तो you have to reverse it along with interest, क्योंकि आपने क्रेडिट तो यूज कर लिया है. So you have to reverse the credit along with interest. कितना इंटरेस्ट? 18% पे को इंटरेस्ट अवेल करना है, और जब आप पे कर लोगे देन रीअवेल इट. सेम, अवेल, रिवर्स, reclaim. So in that situation was when the vendor is not filing the returns, but in this case vendor everything is filed. Now you have defaulted in making payment, कि आपने वेंडर को दबा दिया, आपने पेमेंट टाइम पे नहीं किया है, तब आपको क्रेडिट रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा, और रिवर्स करके यू कैन रिक्लेम इट वंस यू मेक द पेमेंट. अगर मैं पे ही नहीं करूंगा तो फिर आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. एक्सेप्शंस आर देयर फॉर दिस. वन इज आरसीएम, क्योंकि रिवर्स चार्ज बेसिस पे तो क्रेडिट तो मैं ही लूंगा. सो वंस आई मेक द पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्सेस एंड आई रेज अ सेल्फ इनवॉइस, आई कैन क्लेम द क्रेडिट. पेमेंट टू द वेंडर इज नॉट लिंक्ड हियर. When there are deemed supply transactions, हमने देखा है ना, that when you don't receive consideration, still you will pay GST. वैसे ही deemed supply cases में आपको credit pay करने की payment to the vendor is not required, because उसमें आप pay कर ही नहीं रहे हो. Third condition is when the additions are made to supplier's liability being incurred by the recipient. That example of cement, what we had discussed, that cement was to be purchased by me, but the कस्टमर इज ऑलरेडी परचेज्ड इट, तो मुझे उसका पेमेंट तो नहीं करना पड़ेगा. सो द पेमेंट हैज बीन ऑलरेडी बीन मेड. तो इसीलिए इन दीज 3 सिचुएशंस the condition of making payment within 180 days is not there. Have you understood this conditions of 180 days?
Yes, sir. Yes. Sir, other than for fraud, in the regular routine, if vehicle is going without raising e-way bill or like that, some sales tax persons are stopping and asking, raising the chalana for the tax, whether they will get ITC or not, sir, other than fraud.
Other than fraud, they will get, sir.
Even if it is stopped and it was penalized for not e-way bill like that, that issues will be there. For that, they will get ITC, na, sir?
They will get that.
Only for fraud, they will not get.
Correct, correct.
Okay, sir. So what is meant by fraud, sir?
Not defined anywhere. So they have to,
Just a general example I'm asking.
wherever you are, they are able to establish that you are raising an invoice but not supplying goods.
Okay.
Or you are using fake ITC credit, which is not actually credit, but you are utilizing the credit and making payment. So when all of this is established, that becomes a fraudulent cases.
Other than fraud, they can use ITC.
Correct.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Ayush's question is, when can a person claim ITC in case of continuous supply? Even in case of a continuous supply, Ayushi, the period will be continuous. The time of supply there is defined as when there is periodic payments, correct? So when there is periodic payments, invoice has to be made. So when the periodic payments invoice are raised, that's the time of supply is crystallized. So there we will not wait for the last lot. The nature of continuous supply itself is that it will be supplied continuously. So you're receiving the goods. So in case of continuous supply, once the invoice is raised and other conditions are met, you can claim the credit. It is different from receiving in lots, because in receiving in lots, it's a one supply. But in continuous supply, it is continuously getting supplied. So both are different. So once an invoice is raised, you can claim the credit. Okay. So that was on ITC. There are some other conditions, and we will go to block credit under section 17 in our next session. Okay. Thank you very much for appearing on a Sunday and for your participation. We'll see you in the next class. Yes, sir.